Charles, I realize you're living the hut life there in some exotic vacation locale, but it's like a wake over here in New York City. All the idiots did the wrong thing.
I know and it's so obvious. I mean, this is interesting. There's I think it's Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, talks about your enlightened self-interest. I may have that wrong, but the presumption in a lot of quote economics dogma is that individuals will act in their enlightened self-interest. And here you have a test case where arguably one of the most sophisticated city states on earth has chosen to elect a proven liar with no experience to run a government that has a budget now of 120 billion before he gets his mitts on it and tries to increase it. I mean, clearly the electorate in New York City is ignorant. And also clearly, I mean, you look at this and they're saying, oh, Sleeve was a traitor because he stayed in there to get 7.8% or whatever he got of the vote. The fact is, when you add Cuomo to Mondami, you get 90+% of the electorate is left leaning. And, so my attitude is let this be a test case in just how awful this drift to the hard left can become. And I'm sorry, I've got friends and family in the Metro New York area, but this guy is an idiot. I mean, and his mask came off in the victory speech less than about 2 hours after the polls closed. He got up there, and even Van Jones, who's hardly a Republican, said that Mondami's rage-filled speech was just the wrong thing to do immediately after the election because it shows the guy was a liar on the campaign stage. He never answered any questions properly. All you need to do is contrast, as Obama likes to talk about, the arc of history of Singapore with the arc of history of New York. Singapore was literally less developed than where I am now in the Gili Islands in Indonesia, which, I'm not giving my location away because Gili in the local language means islands. Good luck trying to figure out where I am. I think there's 17,000 islands in Indonesia, approximately. But, Singapore had nothing in 1965 when it became a city. Literally nothing. You've been there a number of years ago. I go there every year for a bit. It's a miracle. The place has a very limited city government, national government. It is the most accepted passport on earth. It
Really?
is a home to multiple new businesses every day springing up, where people are bringing their capital because they know the system is not corrupt. Government officials get put in prison for corruption. It's clean. The tax rates are low. Like I think the corporate tax rate's about 20%. Individual tax rates are reasonable. And the government understands there that, wealthy people need a repository for capital. This guy is going to bring, the worst excesses of Chairman Mao to New York City. And on top of which, he's an anti-Semite.
Charles, did you
And
see this?
even Deborah Messing, who I think is more gifted than Lucille Ball as a comedian, but she's so far to the left of me that I'm amazed I'm going to utter this sentence. She is absolutely on point. She is virulently anti-Mondami, and she's a Democrat from Hollywood, or from at least television. So, I mean, I think this picture is not going to end well. And very soon, people in the coddled public sector and academia in New York City are going to figure out that when the billionaires leave and the centimillionaires leave, there's no market for $2 million a year headmistresses and headmasters at private schools anymore. Nobody's going to be paying $75,000 a year to put their kid in nursery school in a communist hellhole. On top of which, it's anti excellence, anti education, and it's just one big propaganda mill for a moron.
Did you see this, Charles?
So I can't
Charlemagne,
really.
the self-proclaimed god, told Van Jones to shut the F up forever after calling Mondami's victory speech divisive.
Again, you see, I mean, this is back when I was a youth. America in the 50s, I was born in 56, but in the late 50s, early 60s, it was basically run by Protestant white men. It was there were and the left was fair enough to say that we need diverse points of view, and let's be tolerant of people who have ideas that are different than these Protestant white men, et cetera, et cetera. Now look what we've become. We've embraced that idea of tolerating different points of view until you get to Charlemagne the fuckwad. He's no god. He's a moron. You cannot. You need to understand, as I do, I think, and by the gift of growing up the way I did, with people who are smart, and a father who was a scientist, who was, played a small role in advancing the frontiers of technology. And he would say constantly, listen, the new ideas are very often quite controversial. So you have to give people who have controversial ideas the chance to speak. The notion that some ignorant radio host would tell anybody to shut the fuck up and just let's follow this idiot mom dummy, into oblivion. New York City, you mark my words, is never going to come back to its never, ever, ever. This is the final nail in the coffin of New York City and New York State. Another nail was Tish James' suits against Trump. In particular, the suit that said you can go back years after the fact, years after a loan has been repaid, and decide in your imperial wisdom, with no expertise in finance, that a borrower got a loan he or she shouldn't have got at the time. And even though that loan was paid off with principal and interest on time, you're going to go re-examine that and determine that somebody derived an illegal benefit, this from somebody who's been stealing money, lying on mortgage applications her whole career. That precedent hasn't been undone. This Charlemagne the God intolerance is being reinforced. And now you have a certified nitwit. What kind of a nitwit says the government should get into the grocery business? I defy you to find a grocery chain that has net margins above 5 or 10%. I don't think you can find such a place. So why should the government, filled with people who have no idea how to run a business, try to take on the grocery business? It's ridiculous. What's he going to do next? Decide that everybody should fly to work even though we don't have any flying cars? I mean, the guy's a moron. And people who have, whether you're a lefty or a righty, people like Deborah Messing sees through this bullshit. She's a lefty. I see and you see through this bullshit. I'm not. I'd say I am a righty on economic issues. And they're just going to leave, turn their back on New York. It's very sad for me. I remember New York when it was humming. But, look, I can't go back and be a teenager again. I can behave like one, but that's time for you. You can't go back into the past. And people are going to move on out of work. They're not coming back. I have no intention of coming back to New York City to buy anything.
That was exactly the same thing that I said today. I've been kind of kidding myself for years now, Charles, thinking against hope that it might come back. But I was thinking exactly that today. I could think about the times of like driving around in cars in high school with my friends and how much fun that was, not having a care in the world. But it's 40 years ago, 35 years ago. It's not coming back, and neither is this. So I think I've got to move on as well. You know what it is? For me, more so even than the terrible things that are most definitely going to happen, that Mondami will be the mayor, it's that we're living in a city, or I'm living in a city, filled with idiots who would vote for this. Why do I want to stay here?
Exactly. And, what's going to happen is, it'll be interesting to look at, I think, the New York City and state have a lot of debt, so there probably is a CDS market, credit default swap market price on New York City and state securities, and I bet you they have been that the insurance contract, that's what it is, to protect an investor against default. I bet you the cost of that insurance is already rising, and why would anybody put capital into New York City at this point? Why would you do it? And the notion as well. And the other thing I love is this is an off-year election, and meaning that it's not a midterm and it's not a presidential year. So there's not that much energy into these contests. And if you have a lot of crooked money, as Soros does and other people around Mandami do, you could rig an election like this, which is, I think, what happened. I mean, you go back to I checked 21, and I think the total amount of votes cast was some. I think Adams got, I think, 1 million votes or something like that. And here, or maybe the total votes were 1 million. Here, it's like 2 million. It's the highest turnout since 1969. I don't know if the population in 2025 is higher or lower than it was in New York City in 1969. It'd be interesting to look into it. But the point is, this is not, a repudiation of Donald Trump. I mean, New York City is not, it's purple. It's not even, it's so far blue. It's dark blue, navy blue, whatever the right phrase is. And, it's no surprise that a hard left person would win in New York City. If this election, we're talking about Abilene, Texas, that'd be different. But, or Palm Beach, or pick a place in Florida. But so this isn't like, Trump lost, he has no mandate anymore. These are hard left lunatics making a stupid decision to elect an idiot and put him on top of a $120 billion budget in a place that is going down, as already, it's not in the toilet bowl anymore. It's like 200 feet down the sewer line. And, people have options. They don't need to feed a whole bunch of overpaid bureaucrats stuck on stupid to make a mockery of one of the world's once great financial capitals. You don't need to do this. And people are going to leave. And there's no way with this kind of performance that he's ever going to legitimately get serious capital. And then you look, I read an article about what he's talking about. He wants to make sure that any endowment run or connected by the New York City divests itself of Israeli stocks. That anybody all this anti-Israel stuff is going to happen in a city that has had the highest concentration of Jewish people, I believe, in New York, in America. So, I mean, this guy is a danger. He is, Gotham is dead thanks to him. And, people, you're looking at the walking wounded, and Charlemagne the God and AOC and the people who think that this is going to help them win a national election have not recently looked at a county map of who voted in 2024, who voted in 2020, who voted in 2016. So this is a dark day in New York City's herstory, not history, I guess.
Yeah, you don't want to be sexist about history. No, I agree, Charles. Right. It really is. I don't know what to say. I mean, like I said, it's, I was in denial for some time, thinking maybe things would come back, maybe, I don't know, be like they were in the 90s, but it's a time gone by. Somebody posted a video of New York City in 1993, and it's like, yeah, it isn't like that anymore. And, 2001...
What were you doing? What were you doing in Cairo?
Yeah.
You said you were in denial.
Denial, yeah. 2001, obviously way closer to 1993 than it is now. Most of the people who voted, or I don't know about most, but certainly a substantial number of people who voted in the election yesterday weren't even alive when 9/11 was happening. It's funny, I was coming up in the elevator in my apartment building here, and somebody held the door for me, and I said, "Hey, thank you. That's very nice of you. You must not live in this building because most people are rude." And I looked at the kid and I was like, wait a minute, you've lived in this building your whole entire life. I remember when you were a little baby. Maybe he was like 14 or 15 now. And he said, yeah, it's amazing. Time really flies, Charles.
Did he vote?
I don't think he could vote. He was too young, but I thanked him for holding the elevator door, and I said, "You're on the right track, kid." That was polite. And he smiled, and it was a nice exchange. There were things like that in New York every day back in the day. Not anymore. Now it's people riding bicycles dangerously on the sidewalk, throwing sodas at people, stabbing, shooting, stealing. New York has turned sour.
Wait till you get on a bus or subway again and somebody gives you your seat.
No.
That's going to happen next.
Oh, for being old?
To make you feel old. Yeah. I was shocked the first time somebody did it to me a long time ago.
I don't like the bus, but he's going to make the bus free. Somebody was interviewing bus drivers. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He is an idiot. Anyone who has spent any time in New York knows that if you make the buses free, the bus will fail because a bunch of vagrants are going to be on the bus, and anybody who has even 250 is not going to want to get on the bus because it's going to be dangerous.
Well, remember during COVID, when the subways were still open, you and I went on the subway one time and we were filming it, and we got into a car and it was filled with garbage.
It was a
And it
feces
was, I mean,
smorgasbord.
yeah, it was like a whole bunch of hobos with all their shit, little shit and garbage and bags and whatever, were in this car with you and me. And because the ridership fell off, it was cold, and people were, going the subway to be warm. And again, we're not in the position of giving stuff away. New York City is technically bankrupt, as is New York State, as I would argue is the federal government of the United States of America. You can't start borrowing money to give shit away for free. I mean, that's a ridiculous idea. And let all these people who, the men and women in their wool caps in the summer and their crazy shoes and outfits and water thermoses that make so much fucking noise in the library, let them all celebrate this. And we'll see how much they like living in a disease-ridden hellhole, which is what New York City is going to be.
He had some comment, Trump said that he's going to withhold federal funds, and Mamdani said something about, Trump doesn't control that and we're going to get the money that we're owed. And I was like, how would somebody who does not live in New York State, who's paying federal taxes, feel about an idiot like this who thinks that he is owed their money to give free buses to people who are here illegally, to arrest ICE agents who are trying to enforce the law, to enforce his own foreign policy where he's going to embrace the International Criminal Court, something that the United States has never done. Why do we even allow the International Criminal Court here? It should be kicked out. Mamdani should be kicked out. Very bad.
Well, again, yeah, and the idea that local elections should be financed with foreign cash. I think if you could get into where did all the money come for Mamdani, you're going to discover it's not from New York City residents. It may not even be from American citizens. And this is a very dangerous thing. Now, I believe that, seldom do I criticize Trump, but under his first term, his State Department got involved financing the pro-democracy movements in Hong Kong. And I think the Chinese government noticed that. And it would not shock me in the slightest to learn that Iranian money and Chinese money and hostile government money has been washed through NGOs to let this Mamdani prick and his cohort, give the United States under Trump a taste of Trump's own medicine when he was poking a stick at China. That I think, if I were the Chinese and I wanted to have something to disrupt America, this is what I would do. I would take the big cities, which are susceptible to this leftist crap, and I would funnel resources to them to put an idiot in Chicago. We're on the idiot program. We've had an idiot in Obama, and the bloom is off that rose. More and more people are finally looking at that idiot and realizing that to say he's an idiot is maybe a compliment. He may, if he studied hard, maybe he'd become an idiot. But the coterie of the Schumers, the Durbins, the Bushes, the Cheney, may he rot in hell. All these people who are pro-globalist and don't understand that the globalist program just puts a gigantic yoke on the back of the private sector worker. So this is, again, it's a dark day. It's actually a very bright day here, but it's a dark day for New York City and a dark night for New York City. And and the dark night isn't rising. The dark night is stumbling on its way down, the 100 stories of stairs.
Yeah. We should talk about the death of Penis Cheney. That was at least a bit of good news.
Yeah, that guy, he is like 84, so he's gone 15 years older than I am. So he went through Yale and got kicked out of Yale before I was there, at a time when it was very difficult to get kicked out. Winthrop Rockefeller also got kicked out of Yale in the 20s or 30s. I mean, it's really hard to do that. You have to be, I mean, belligerent to get kicked out of Yale. And George W. Bush didn't exactly do well at Yale. So, um, I think the people, the puppeteers in the big economies, they do not want a competent team holding the levers of power in a government that today uses about 10 or 12 trillion dollars per year on who knows what at this stage. I mean, that is a large pile of money to be blowing every year. So they want idiots in the House, in the Senate, in federal government, and they have their share of idiots. And this is just careening towards, over the cliff into shark-infested waters. This is not the right direction for New York City. The right direction for New York City is to have a government team that says, you know what? No more public unions, no more propaganda mill private institutions and academia. We are going to be a haven for capital. We're going to sign a 100-year pledge, a 250-year pledge. You bring your capital inside this country. We will treat your capital inside the city. We will treat it the same way, better than Singapore. Whatever Singapore does will be better. And if you could do that and say to the surrounding states, if you sign on to this pledge, we'll let the headquarters be in New York City, and we'll give special preference to manufacturing and service operation located in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York State. You did something like that, you'd have a renaissance in the Northeast. But now, instead, you said, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to give everybody AIDS, leprosy, and start eating uranium. And, and you don't need to go to the bathroom, a toilet anymore. Just do it on the street. That's the program for New York City. And and you saw that moron on some kind of drugs went into the Metropolitan Museum and started throwing water on masterpiece paintings and ripping down tapestries. That's in essence what Mandami is doing.
I hadn't seen that, but yeah, there's not enough. 30 framed artworks have been vandalized. Oh no, that's something different. I didn't see that thing that you're talking about.
It's there for sure. I saw it multiple places.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. It's a sad day.
And I'm drinking water, by the way. This is not vodka.
Not vodka.
I feel like having some vodka, but this is water.
Yeah, it's a tragic day for sure. People maybe remember Do the Right Thing. Somebody thought I was wearing funny shoes. These are Danny Aiello's shoes. And it's funny, Zoran Mamdani, he's got the pizza there. It's free pizza. Reminded me of my conversation with that idiot Samir Masi, who was concerned with free pizza. But Charles, we're about to make our way over to the First Amendment Forum. I do have to thank everybody who's been sponsoring Crowdsource the Truth on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and also people who follow me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribe over there. Thank you to everybody doing that. I don't know if you realize this, Charles, but the evidence bounty, it's over. And nobody was able to present a counter thesis. In fact, the original evidence that came to me as a result of doing this seems to strengthen and sharpen the thesis here. So thanks to everybody who supported this. I'm going to be announcing what I think people will be very satisfied and surprised what I'm going to do with the money from the evidence bounty, but I'm still putting it together, so I don't want to talk about it just yet. But Charles, we'll be back in a moment. People can join us on the sponsor exclusive channels for the First Amendment Forum. Stay